So for this video, I'm going to discuss the rising trend of these Asian pygmies. A lot of these Asians, especially the women in Western countries, they have lost all self-respect. So you guys might heard of this stereotype, especially for the Chinese parents. They always tell their sons or daughters, "Oh, you must marry a Chinese guy," or the vice versa is also true, right? Or you must marry a Chinese girl. Yes, that is very much true. Now, the parents nowadays, they don't really force this onto their children because, well, if this was actually forced onto them, then you wouldn't be seeing so many of these white men and the Asian woman couples. I honestly think, so many modern Asian women do this, especially the Chinese women, is to piss off their parents. So there's a great generational rift that's happening. There's a reason why these Chinese parents, they tell you that, well, you must marry a Chinese guy, or if you must marry a Chinese girl. Yeah, we can talk about, the snow bunny crisis as well, because, well, especially as a man, anytime you're marrying to a woman, okay, you're giving your wealth to her. So, before, let's say if you're pretty successful, self-made millionaire, right? And then when you get married, well, that, your checking account with $1 million inside of it, now that becomes a joint checking account with you and your wife. And the evidence are pretty obvious. If you look at earnings by interracial couples in the US, right? So the highest combination is actually not even the white man and the Asian woman. So the highest earning couple is Asian male with white female. Reasons are very obvious. So generally speaking, right, on average, Asian Indian men are considered to be the least attractive. So if they want to attract a white girl, a nice little Natasha, nice little Stacy, nice little Becky, they have to be able to make a lot of money, right? Usually only the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the successful entrepreneurs, or if you're the lucky ones that, your daddy's got a little bit of money and he sets you up with a trust fund and you have generational wealth, yes, you can give yourself a very nice snow bunny. But with the exception of those extreme cases, it's going to be very, very difficult for an Asian or Indian guy. Yeah, look up the Forbes list of the world's richest billionaires, female billionaires. Look up every single one. Look up the top 10, top 20, top 50, top 100. For example, Mackenzie Scott. What the hell is Mackenzie Scott? Absolutely nothing, right? The richest woman in the world. Over 99% of the cases, okay? So every single one of them got their billions of dollars, their generational wealth via a divorce, or in many cases where, this is the snow bunny crisis, basically. Yeah. So the vast majority of the time, if you're a man with generational wealth, I mean, you're going to look for a younger woman, right? It's going to take you some time to accumulate that kind of money. So let's say by the time you do have a little bit of money, you're 30, 35, 40. You're not going to marry a 35 or 40-year-old woman. You're probably going to marry a 20, 22, 24-year-old, right? And once again, on average, women live much longer than men. Typically, the world average, I believe, is something like about 4.5 years. Yeah, 4.4 to 4.5 years. So let's say, if you're a 35-year-old guy, you marry a 22-year-old woman. So yeah, on average, right, these women, they're going to be widowed for at least anywhere between 15 to 20 years, right? So even if the marriage does not end in divorce, after you die, all of your wealth is going to be inherited by that woman. And it's the same thing, right? If you're a super rich Asian or Indian guy, and if you marry a snow bunny who is 10, 15, 20 years younger, after you die, that white woman is going to get all of your money. That's just how the world works. For example, if you look at a Asian guy, let's say a Chinese guy, and he has a little bit of money, he gets himself a snow bunny, so nice little Natasha. So I've noticed oftentimes it's very rare for these white women to take on their husband's name, not fully. Sometimes they will hyphenate their name, so they end up with a combined two last names, right? However, every single one of the cases where, if it's a white man marrying an Asian woman, and their mindset is just completely skewed. They absolutely hate their appearance, they hate their image, and they hate their culture, they hate their language, they hate their own names. Yeah, you almost never see an Asian woman hyphenate their last name. It's like they want their ancestry to be completely wiped off from the face of earth. So they're more than happy to take on a European last name, and they will try to do everything in their power to erase their Asian ancestry. I want to give you guys an example. A lot of you guys probably know this at this point, I'm sure. So the reason why in so many of these places, for example, in Canada, if you look at all the fast food chains, look at Tim Hortons, McDonald's, KFC, look at Dairy Queen or Walmart or Loblaws, So how come, since the end of 2015, starting in 2016 onwards, how come, the demographic has completely shifted? How come there are so many Indians at Tim Hortons now? How come there are so many Indians at Walmarts now? Well, human beings are born to be a very tribalistic, if that's what you want to call it. Yeah, as soon as one of these Indian man or Indian woman, if they get into an HR position, right, and if they're in charge of hiring, yeah, they will refuse to hire anybody that's white, black, Chinese, Arab, Hispanic, Native American. They will only hire Indians. And this is also very much true for Chinese people as well. In fact, let me take this a step further. So when I say the Indians, they will hire Indians. Well, so the number one religion in India is the Hindu religion, right? So the Hindus, they're not going to hire the Punjabis. They're not going to hire the Sikhs. They're not going to hire the Muslims. You have to remember, in India, there's also roughly 200 million Muslims, right? 13% of the population. There are almost as many Muslims in India compared to Pakistan. Pakistan has something like 235 million Muslims. Though, let's say one of these Indian men or woman, let's say they got the job as an HR manager at Walmart. Okay, they're not going to hire any other religious Indians, right? If that manager is a Hindu Indian, they're only going to hire the Hindus. So it's very much the same. I talk about, I work at this Asian grocery store. I say it's Chinese because it's Taiwanese funded. Okay, a lot of you guys will disagree, but I think it's time for Taiwan to return to China. So something very interesting. The very first time I applied to work part-time at the grocery store, I noticed something. Every single Chinese person, right, or slash Taiwanese, every single one of these people that's in these higher level managerial positions, right, the executives, right, I'm talking about, the store managers, people who have a lot of money and wealth, every single one of them at one point, okay, they all spoke Cantonese. So what is Cantonese? So the city of Guangzhou, a long time ago, it used to be called Canton. Right, that's where China's century of humiliation started, when the British started smuggling opium through the port of Canton. That was during the 13 Factories era. So it's very interesting. So Cantonese is maybe like 10% of the Chinese people speak this, I wouldn't say a language, it's a local dialect, because the writing's the same as, so the official language in China, a lot of people, they call it Putonghua. Putonghua, it's Mandarin Chinese, that's their official language. It's the only one that's recognized. It's not like Canada where you have English and Quebec French, right? So Cantonese is not recognized as official language, it's more of a local dialect. But then I realized something. All of these people in these managerial, powerful executive positions at one time at the company, right, out of, there could be, 50, 75, 100 guys. None of them spoke Mandarin Chinese as their mother tongue, right? Every single one of them spoke Cantonese, right? So that's what I mean. Human beings are very tribalistic. Even though people from the south, if they're from Hong Kong or Guangzhou or Shenzhen, these are Chinese people. Then you have people who are, let's say, in the central, if they're in Beijing or Tianjin, so that's more of like the central. Now, obviously, you're still Chinese. Or if you're from the northeast, right? If you're from Heilongjiang or Jilin or Liaoning, right? Sure, you're from, different parts of the country, but all of them are ethnic Chinese. But even, the people within China, right? If they recognize someone that also speaks the same local dialect, they're like, oh, this person is Cantonese, but no, this Chinese guy from central China or from the north, he speaks Mandarin Chinese as his mother tongue. So you know what? I'm only going to hire the Cantonese guy. And a lot of people, you don't want to admit this. This did not change until probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, the grocery store chain has been around for over 30 years. Certainly, I would say for the first 20 to 25 years, almost every single one of the executives at the company, they were all Cantonese speaking. Some of you guys might call that, a form of discrimination. Yes, somewhat. Obviously, it wouldn't be xenophobia or racism, because it doesn't matter if you speak Cantonese or Mandarin Chinese, you're still ethnic Chinese, right? But there are good reasons for it. There's a very good reason why the vast majority of the Chinese parents, even the ones who are living in America or Canada or Australia, they're still telling their kids that, you must marry a Chinese girl or you must marry a Chinese guy. And this has nothing to do with racism or xenophobia. So, for example, so look at what has happened to China in the past 10, 15, 20 years, right? Cantonese used to be such a big language. By the way, even Cantonese is actually a bunch of different dialects. So it's very complex. So there are so many local dialects in China. When I was in Chengdu just this past winter, so the local Sichuan dialect, I was really struggling to understand it. But and nowadays, what happens is if you go to these Cantonese-speaking cities, these mega cities, so obviously the three biggest ones, right? Hong Kong, there's also Guangzhou and Shenzhen. Walk around those cities. If you're someone who speaks, fluent Chinese, you will realize something. The local Cantonese dialect is disappearing. Now, if you go to Hong Kong, right, the dominant language is Mandarin Chinese. Every single person has to learn it. And so, the cultural identity and the local dialect of the local Hong Kong people, it's slowly disappearing. It's the same thing. So if you go to, let's say, Montreal, not so much. I'm talking about if you live in Canada, by the way. So Canada has two official languages. So in Quebec and also in parts of Eastern Canada, and for sure, I mean the capital. So I would say at least a third of the residents living in Ottawa, they have some level of proficiency in Canadian French. Yes, I did actually live on the Quebec side for 1 year. I did make an effort to try to learn Quebec French. For the most part, I can understand it, but I would say it's very limited. It's very difficult to become fluent. So it's very important if you want to land yourself a six-figure government job, you need to be fluent in Quebec French. So yeah, if you go to Montreal, let's say 20, 30, 40 years ago, right, if you walk around the city, you will realize that, the city is probably like 95% Quebec French speaking, but now that has completely changed. I believe according to like the newest census, like I think it's only something like 45% of the residents of Montreal, Quebec actually speak fluent Quebec French. The demographic has been changed forever. The cultures, the customs, the history of the locals from Montreal has been 100% wiped out. It's one of those things, right? I've been to Quebec so many times, right? A lot of people say, are people from Quebec really weird? Are they like really racist or xenophobic? Not necessarily. I'll tell you this, before I made any effort to learn Quebec French, at one point, my proficiency was like 0. And every time I went to these places, okay, Montreal is not so terrible, but if you went to other cities like Quebec City or Sherbrooke or one of these small, Quebec towns, they don't get pissed at you because if you're Chinese or Indian or Black or Arab or Mexican, right? They get pissed at you if you cannot speak Quebec French. Like they will get really angry. I got so many eye rolls. I remember when I'm trying to take out these orders at the local McDonald's or KFC or Dairy Queen or Tim Hortons, and I had to use English. I mean, the dirty stares and the eye rolls they give you, oh, you can tell there's hatred in their eyes. They don't like it when people speak English to them. Yes, the boomers have a lot of problems. Both in Western countries and also in China. But you always have to look at both sides of the issue, right? You have to compare the pros to the cons. Yeah, the older generation of the Chinese people, they were absolutely right about this. You might think it's controversial, this arranged marriage. Do I think it should be coming back? Okay, so to a certain extent, I think, for the young people, if you're struggling in the dating world, and I'm talking about the ones who actually wants to get married and have children and build a legacy, right? If you're really struggling, if you had some terrible experiences, yeah, I think, it's time to turn to your parents, especially for, let's say, a 23-year-old Chinese woman who's struggling in the dating world. And you should ask your father, tell her that, Dad, I'm really struggling. Can you set me up with a couple of guys that you 100% approve? And I think that should be the way to move forward. Because ever since China got rid of arranged marriage, everything has gone to shit, right? So there's a saying in China. It's called 门当户对. What does this mean? So basically, it means that, for example, I was born in the Northeast, right? If you're just a regular mid 5 out of 5 Chinese girl who was born in the Northeast, back in the day when arranged marriage was a thing, so the Chinese father would also pick out, a guy who is exactly on your level, right? So this guy, he's also a 5 out of 10. He comes from a very similar family backgrounds, and he also comes from the same region as you. I think that's extremely important. The reason why my family is extremely toxic, even though all of them are Chinese. I did mention even my younger sister and cousin, they both married Chinese guys, but I'm talking about, multi-millionaire Chinese guys. But yeah, back in the day, that was also very important in China. So basically, if you're some girl who's from Shanghai, that means that the father of that Chinese girl is also going to pick out his future son-in-law. The number one requirement is that he must also be from Shanghai as well. And if you're someone who's Cantonese speaking from Hong Kong, then yeah, and the girl's father will also pick out another Chinese guy who's Cantonese speaking from Hong Kong. And it's the same thing if you're from Chengdu, your husband must be from Chengdu as well. And yeah, I did mention before, even though I was born in the Northeast, but my grandmother, she's from the Liaoning province, and so my grandfather is from the Sichuan province. So yeah, my grandmother actually went against her arranged marriage. My grandmother, let's be honest, right, she's just a regular Chinese woman who's mid. Originally, her father wanted to set her up with someone who's also on the same level as her, just a normal, average Chinese guy. But then she met my maternal grandfather, who at the time was the richest guy in the city of 450,000 people. He's an army commander in the Cannon division. So my grandmother became a gold digger and chased after, the number one richest guy in a city of almost 500,000 people. That's why their marriage was so toxic. I mean, someone once said, yeah, facts don't care about your feelings. The reality is, if you look at, the divorce rates for these interracial marriages, every single one of them is through the roof. Right? The highest one is between black man and a white woman. Interestingly enough, I covered this in the past in a 16-minute video. I think I will be coming back to that one as well. So the only interracial pairing that actually works with low divorce rates is white man with black woman, not white man with Asian woman. So over half of marriages between white man and the Asian woman will also end in divorce. And the vice versa is also true if it's an Indian guy or an Asian guy marrying a white girl. And if you think about, the dramatic rise of divorces in so many parts of the world, right? Not just in the West, but also in China, in South Korea, in Japan. I believe in Japan, the divorce rate is 37%. In South Korea, it's 47%. In China, overall, it's 50%. And in my hometown, unfortunately, it is 75%. Well, yeah. Like I said, China got rid of arranged marriage. So it was never part of a law. Just starting in the 1990s, China kind of just phased out of this arranged marriage thing. That's when divorce started to skyrocket. And also, yeah, with the rise of internet, with the rise of social media, with the rise of technology, China's got these insane light rails. Yeah, if you go to the city of Changsha, that's near Chairman Mao Zedong's hometown, you can take the maglev train. So it's a magnetic levitation. So the train is actually floating right a couple inches above the track. So there's no friction. Yeah, the train can travel to upwards of 500 kilometers per hour. So yeah, 500 kilometers per hour or 310 miles. So if you're someone who's American, it's very interesting. So if you're someone who is watching this from America, if you like to smile, does this mean that people in Europe and China who are into the metric system, do these people sklometer? Yeah, so with the dramatic rise of technology, right? Now you can travel from northern China to southern China, and so the train side you can just book a flight, right? So you can get from the north to the south in 3 to 4 hours. So now there are so many of these interprovincial and intercultural marriages, right? So for example, someone from Beijing who could be mixing with someone who is from the northeast, right, from Heilongjiang province. Someone from Shanghai will be mixing with someone who is from Chengdu. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, human beings are meant to be tribalistic. And yeah, if you look at the breakdown of all of these marriages and divorces, yeah, the marriages were the most likely to be successful is that if the husband was, let's say, born and raised in Chengdu, and also the wife is also born and raised in Chengdu. But in the cases, let's say if the husband is from Chengdu, but the wife is from Shanghai, then there's an extremely high chance of divorce. Yeah, there's 100% no doubt about it. And this is why, I talk about, these white worshipping has destroyed Asians. Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video and watching it all the way until the end. If you guys have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification button. Thank you guys so much.
Everybody knows that I'm breaking down. Everybody knows I ain't faking now. Everybody knows my heart's vacant now.